What are we talking about now? Remind me what we're talking about.
If you look behind you, dearie, what's on the shelf?
Oh, it's that one. Okay. Fine.
And what happens with this, Jason, is I'll introduce it, and you introduce yourselves, and then we'll talk about it for a bit, and then we'll give it a score.
Hate you all. Hate you all. Hate you all.
Well, that's the Christmas spirit, that is. That's nice.
Humbug. I tells you, humbug.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a festive special of Talking About Who. I am P-Bal, Paul, whatever you want to say. I mean, it's Christmas. It's not Christmas right now. I'm going to level with you. It's like July. It's not. So I'm Paul P-Bal, and I'm joined by...
Hello, it's James. Merry Christmas.
And hello, it's Santa's little helper, Jason.
Santa's little helper. Bloody hell. Is that because of the deficiencies in getting foreign labour? Is that what's happened? He's got Jason now.
Couldn't get lorry drivers, just got Jason.
So all the kids have got slightly damaged presents because Santa's little helper's had one too many drinks.
Oh, I wouldn't. No, I certainly would make sure I wasn't drinking on Christmas Eve so that the presents would all get there.
Do you want to say that again without the slurring?
Yeah, it's true, actually.
Anyway, as it's Christmas, now, as we time travel through the video void, we're going to be talking about Doctor Who and the K9 and Company, or K9 and Company and the Girl's Best Friend, or K9 and Company, a Girl's Best Friend, or just K9 and Company. So many options. So, who's starting us off? Who's got a pre-written intro for the Christmas season? No takers.
Jason has. Look at him.
I haven't actually for once.
I thought you were going to burst out into a sort of chorus of Hecate, Hecate, Hecate.
No, it's got to be no. It's got to be do 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 K9 do 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 K9.
I love Paul's face when we do that.
It's a little bit like someone's gone on a 3, 2, 1 set with a machine gun. And I don't think it's good. Well, I suppose again. So this. I mean, let's call upon the elders. Then we'll go to Jason first because Jason, you'd have been in the period where you would have known that this was Doctor Who's first spin-off. This would have been a big thing.
I absolutely would have been. I would have known that. You're quite right. But up until the point of actually watching this for this review, I have to admit to never having actually ever watched K9 and Company. Now, I am utterly amazed by this. Utterly amazed by it.
Stop the Matrix.
Hang on. So all those years where you were doing snooker in the Cardiff halls with children and need telephones for Doctor Who, you hadn't watched K9 and Company.
I genuinely haven't until watching for this review ever seen K9 and Company. Now, I must admit, I'll probably have to hand my Doctor Who fandom badge back in as a result of this, but I genuinely hadn't watched it.
Why?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. What would I have been? I would have been 11 when it was broadcast, so it must have just skipped me by. Maybe I was sent to bed early that night for being a naughty boy or something. Who knows? But I didn't watch it at the time. And it came boxed out when it was released on DVD. Was it boxed out with something like The Invisible Enemy off the top of my head?
Well,
yeah.
But that's also behind you, Jason. You've got the DVD behind you.
Well, I have now because I've watched it. So I kind of.
But it's also on the Blu-ray set. And it was also on VHS at UK Gold. What is wrong with you?
I have never watched it. I'm telling you now, that's the honest truth.
Well.
Ow.
There you go. Does that disappoint you all?
Do you know, it disappoints me, but it doesn't surprise me.
But the positive is it was a new piece of Doctor Who that I'd never seen before. So, I could watch it with a new pair of eyes.
I mean, never. Not even when conventions used to show videos during the day and people would sleep in the video rooms at night. Not even then did you ever watch 50 minutes of your life seeing Sarah Jane and K9.
Nope, I was watching all the black and white Doctor Who's in the video rooms overnight.
Can't believe it.
Can we just ask the viewer to keep a note here? Because at some point during this, he will say that it's his favourite story and he watches it every week.
Oh, Jane, you missed out on so much. I mean, the title sequence alone, where you've got Sarah Jane driving around in her convertible metro.
I didn't even know they made convertible mini metros.
I think they did. I think it was just for the shot. I mean, it's the titles, every time I see those, I just think this is glorious. I mean, it's Sarah Jane in all these different poses. You've got Canine on a wall for some reason. He's just sat on a wall because she was sat there a moment ago. There's lots of these dynamic sort of looks to the camera, as they pan around. There's the infamous shot where she sat outside a pub with a typewriter and a glass of wine.
For ages, I thought it was a bus stop. I thought she was sat at a bus stop with a typewriter and a glass of wine. I was so confused as to why Sarah Jane got to that point. She's like, "Oh, I got an article. I'm just popping to the bus stop with a Pinot." John Nathan Turner, I think, in his great wisdom, thought it was going to be like Heart to Heart. He thought it was going to be kind of, it would look effortlessly action-packed and glossy.
But isn't it odd, though, that somebody who by from what the stories we hear, absolutely detested the character of K9, I mean, the amount of times K9 came a cropper in season 18, to give K9 and Sarah essentially their own spin-off pilot, that was quite some jump for him, wasn't it?
But I think he understood the popularity, though, didn't he? I think people liked K9, and he was basically quite a few years ahead of himself, wasn't he? Thinking, actually, don't want this in my main series, but I can see that people will like this as a spin-off, and Liz had come very close to coming back for the end of Tom's to bridge that gap. So obviously there was a bit of contact there. And as a premise, it's quite a nice one that you think, oh, actually, Sarah Jane, the journalist, it's a great sort of shtick to get adventures happening. I mean, as we know, that did really work out later on when it was done a little differently. But in some ways it's slightly insulting, and we can get this out of the way straight away, that it's K9 and company, which infers that K9 is the star of the show and everyone else is sort of, part of the gang, or you could theoretically have someone else the next week because K9's the star. But I think, as we've sort of discussed previously, K9 isn't really a protagonist, is he?
No. I mean, he's driven around in the back of a car. I mean, there's a bit where he's just left in someone's house to eavesdrop. Apart from a few classic sort of laser blasts to save the day, he's still pretty ineffectual as he was in the series. But there is, you're right. I think, again, sort of JNT was a bit ahead of his time here, because this was quite popular. I mean, it was 8.4 million people that tuned in to watch it, which, if you were to say those kind of figures around today's show, they would be like, through the roof. But it had longevity, because you saw them again, it was canonized in the Five Doctors because you had Sarah Jane K9. Then you saw them again in School Reunion when the series came back. And then obviously you have, ultimately the Sarah Jane Adventures. So there was so much love for that combination and so much desire to see it happen. So although it never took off at this point, it obviously did take off later on and was very popular. So I think he was onto a good thing. Like you say, I know he didn't particularly like K9, but he really wanted Sarah back in the main show. And because that didn't happen, this was kind of like I'll do something else with you then, because I love the character. You could, it's a 50-minute sort of one-off, but it does feel very Doctor Who in the sort of the setup. You've got the coven, you've got someone, Aunt Lavinia's gone missing, and she was sort of mentioned when Sarah was in the show, so it's got that sort of feeling of familiarity. And yeah, you could almost imagine that the Doctor turns up, and if this was like the first 2 episodes, the Doctor would turn up in the 3rd or 4th episode just to make sure everything was tied up neatly at the end. But it's got that very familiar feel to it.
In some respects, she's taken the part of the Doctor because she's got the companion figure, if you like, with Brendan, and then you've got K9, and obviously she's the one that's sort of leading what's going on in the story. And you're right, this is an atypical sort of Doctor Who story. We've had black magic, we've had covens, we've had all sorts of things through the years in Doctor Who, and this wouldn't have been out of place if they'd actually set it in Aldbourne and taken it as a carry-on from sort of the Demons even. But I could see a series actually coming out of this that would have had sort of probably at least a season or two, a year or two in it, I would say. And it would have been that, you could almost imagine it turning into she's going to solve Mystery of the Week. And they can become a little bit of a duo with K9. And I think it probably could have worked. But I think there are some downsides, to essentially majoring your series around the robot dog.
I think John always attributed the fact it didn't go further to them focusing too much on a black magic story, which sounds like a sort of a waffle. That sounds like a sort of answer to an anecdote that doesn't really tally up. I mean, ratings-wise, it did fine. It did absolutely as much as the series was sort of doing at the time. So it is odd that it didn't get a series, but I suspect maybe he wasn't quite pushing for it in the way.
I read there was a change in the controller. So the previous BBC One controller liked the idea, but by the time it broadcast, they had another controller had come in who said they didn't like it. So it kind of never got traction, even though it did do really well in the ratings. The BBC controller that came in, I think it was Alan Hart, he didn't like it. He just went, no, I'm not commissioning any more of that, which is a shame.
He's a bit short-sighted, particularly as I think it was a great vehicle for Liz Sladen. I think she steps back into the role of Sarah here almost effortlessly. I mean, it's almost like she's not been away from the program. I think there is a series in here somewhere, and I am surprised now, having watched it, that it didn't get any further than that. But I suppose in those days, spin-offs and sequels, well, okay, perhaps you had Dynasty and the Colbys and various things. So there was I suppose there was a bit of a trait for it back in the 80s, but maybe the BBC weren't up for it, as you said. Alan Hart maybe not there, but this has got a series written all over it. I think we've been robbed here a little.
Yeah, I think the great thing is that Liz, I think that's what you said quite a lot, is she is so on the money with any of it. I mean, there's a lot around her that isn't on the money. I'm happy to go out on the limb. I adore K9 and Company, but I know I adore it for all its awfulness in some ways. So it is slightly, I feel, pitched towards the kids more than the TV show is, maybe, like Doctor Who is, maybe. But yeah, no, she's never less than 100% and compelling, and she obviously has got enough charisma and style to carry a series on her own. But here's the big but: the story, if you sit and try and work out what K9, nothing actually happened. Nothing has happened. The actual mystery. Okay, I mean, everyone that's watching this, if you haven't watched K9 Company like Jason, and you're watching this, then there's something wrong with you. She arrives because to visit her aunt, and then golden moment. I love Colin Jeavons' entrance when he goes, "My name's Tracy," and there's like a terror twang that goes with it. And it's like, what is it? Such a terrible thing. Anyway, yeah, the name's Tracy.
I'll be your villain this week.
There are a lot of people in this that want to be the villain and decide they're going to play the villain part. But basically, she arrives and her aunt's not there. So she's trying to work out her aunt's gone. But her aunt's just gone early. She's just gone on to work early. That's what's happened.
She's popped off to do some recording on Jeeves and Worcester. She'll be back by the end of the episode.
So basically, Sarah then spends the next however long. I mean, you couldn't transplant this into the modern age, could you? Because she'd just be like, it's all right, Lavinia's on Twitter, she's at a party, she's fine. It it's a really odd thing. So she's just investigating somebody who's not gone missing, and then they decide to sacrifice a friend. That's the only part where a crime takes place, is when they kidnap Brendan and go to sacrifice him, which it would seem they weren't going that far in any other juncture before then. So there's sort of a missing peril.
Aunt Lavinia is supposed to have written an article, hasn't she, about witchcraft, which has stirred up the local coven. But you're right, there isn't. They don't sort of explain. There's no sort of hints that they have done anything with her. You know, Sarah Jane turns up. I mean, I love the fact that K9's been in like some basement or attic for years. You know, this box has been kicking around. We've had it moved from one house to another house. Do you finally want to get it? And she opens it up and goes, "Oh, what the hell is this?"
She's got K9 Mark III and a pile of Dalek master plan prints, all stacked in the attic. She's like, "Can't be asked. They know what that's all about." Doctor Who's like, "I'll send you 16 millimeters of all my greatest adventures."
It's quite funny, but you're right. I mean, the story doesn't stand up to a great deal of scrutiny. I mean, there's some brilliant overacting in this as well. I don't know if you've seen recently on Twitter, they've had where is it Juno makes the phone call and she's like, "I'd like to invite you to drinks like this," and they've cut it with lots of other people sort of saying, "Yeah, I'll be there," and then gone back to say, "Oh, she'll come." It's you're just like, are you?
Linda Poland has decided that she is going to be the villain of this piece. Yeah. So she's like, "I've read this, it's not great, but I think I should probably be behind it all." And so everything she says has a certain air of mystery. She'll come. It's like, so when it just turns out, she's like, "Oh, you were so suspicious of us. I don't know what made you think we could be villains." Like, babes, look in the mirror. I think we know why Sarah's suspicious of you. If you haven't done it this week, you're definitely doing it next week.
I was going to say, I kept waiting. Every time I watch it, I expect there to be this like end of show bit where she sat there with Sarah Jane and she's going, "Oh, I can't believe you thought we were a suspect," and they drugged Sarah Jane or something happens and they go, "You were right all along," and pull a gun on her or something, because every scene she's in, she seems to be acting very suspiciously. It's just...
Yeah, and again, there's also that thing. So basically, the whole gist of the story comes down to the fact that Aunt Lavinia is an inconsiderate cow, because she could have just said to her best friend, who she's having drinks with before at the very start when the stuff's being moved in and out. She could have said, "Do you know what? I've had an emergency call from my publisher and I've got to go a few days earlier. Don't worry." No, she just tells Bill, doesn't she? Which it makes no sense, because surely her best friend would be like, "Oh, don't worry, Sarah Jane dear. She just went off early."
And it's Bill who's the villain, isn't it? It's
yes.
Like, I told my business partner, well, actually, there's sort of Scooby-Doo reveal at the end, which he pulls off the mask.
And Lily Gregson from the post office, who you only see twice and has nothing to do with any of it. She waves in the village and she makes her a nice cup of tea. And then at the end, when you pull the unless you've seen it a dozen times, it's like, who? Who is that? Oh, all right, the post lady. So the gist being that she'd just not sent the cable or not told her about the cable. So that's why she had to be involved, because she was the post lady and she had the power to stop the cable going through. But even though it didn't do anything, because
the cable wasn't sent in the first place.
Exactly. But then the cable wasn't sent for no reason other than to make Sarah panic about where her auntie was until her auntie could be asked to phone up. I mean, let's put it this way. If Aunt Lavinia had phoned up on the first day and said, "Hi, Sarah, I know you're arriving today. This is how you switch the central heating on," all of this could have been avoided.
Yeah. Or if they just told Sarah Jane that she'd gone off to a hotel, then she would never have been suspicious in the first place.
I do love that classic 80s, I'm in a hotel room somewhere internationally, and you have that kind of, I love that when they're like, she's Pebble Mill, that's not abroad. I love that kind of, I'm abroad. I'm doing Poland for all of them now. Okay. It's merging into Catherine Shell a little bit, but I haven't got enough impressions to see me through.
There's just so many. I mean, like when she goes to the bookcase, she goes, "Oh, hello," and she pulls out these 3 books about witchcraft. And just like, what sort of, why? Why did that suddenly just go? Oh, that's a clue. It's like, is it? It was all, yeah. It doesn't stand up to too much questioning,
but it adds to the charm of it, though, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
It does. It is like a Scooby-Doo story, basically. It's like, who done it, and at the end they reveal it.
And you get Sarah Jane's judo. Stick that in your leader, Mr. Tobias.
Yeah, quite. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
There is a scene in the opening credits though where she's like running along like the sort of what's it called? The multi-million-dollar man, sort of like running along like that in slow motion. So obviously she's going to be kick-ass.
Complete with 80s leggings, I think, as well.
Yeah, there are so many looks in that title sequence. So looks. So we've established that Jason saw this half an hour ago. Some of it. Ooh.
That's a lie. I've watched it all. I can assure you, I've watched it all.
We'll just leave that. Just that little pause of indefinite. James, when did you come to the Canine and Company?
I came when it first came out on. I think it was the DVD. I didn't see it when it was broadcast. It was wasn't it repeated as well as part of a. I've got a feeling it was like a Doctor Who season, but it wasn't one of the BBC ones. It was another one. I think I might have seen it then, but I definitely saw it on the DVD when it came out with Invisible Enemy. And I loved it.
Did you not have it on video?
Was it in a double box? Was it on its own? I don't remember having it on its own.
It was on its own. It had a lovely postcard. It was in the era where they gave you a free postcard with the VHS.
Oh, they were glory days.
To win your collector's album. Because I saw it. I saw it first. I mean, let's put it out there. I wasn't alive when it was broadcast. It's true. You can carbon date me. I saw it on the 30th anniversary weekend from UK Gold.
That's it. That's when I saw it. Yeah.
It was quite a rare thing at that point. So that was how I saw it first, and then it must have been on VHS a couple of years later because it became one of the lowest selling VHSs, and you can sort of see why, because it's not really quite Doctor Who. You'll always have someone, I don't know, maybe an old Mary from Cardiff that won't want to engage with it.
I'm saying nothing.
And then then you had the Canine double pack DVD, didn't you, with Invisible Enemy and Canine and Company. 2 thrillers there for everyone. So in terms of chronology, though, it does come between Logopolis and Castrovalva, doesn't it? So to my mind, it's better than any of the Doctor Who that sort of surrounds it.
Oh, yes, we didn't have a lot of nice things to say about season 18, did we, when we reviewed that?
So maybe we should be thankful for Canine and Company for that, because it's. I respect that, dear you might love Doctor Who and the Logopolis and the like. Do you think it would have been better if it were 2 parts? Do you think it should have had the Doctor Who format of being 25 minutes, cliffhanger 25 minutes? Or do you think a 50-minute suits this?
No, I think a 50-minute suits it. And like I said already, I think this definitely had something in it that I think could have had a couple of years out of it had they had the backing, I suppose, at the time by the BBC, because there isn't an ending amount of stories you could tell here about, goings on around the village, or, you could spread it a little bit further afield and take it around the UK or whatever that might be, or bring alien menaces coming in and threatening the situation. This is fine at 50 minutes, and it stands it aside from Doctor Who for being so.
I mean, the Sarah Jane Adventures took the 50-minute format but cut it into two, didn't it? It was essentially two sort of 20+ minute episodes with a cliffhanger. I don't know, because now we're more used to 50-minute episodes in, since the show came back in 2005. That's the format we've had, 45, 50-minute episodes. So I can't really think of a point in this where you could cut it another dramatic cliffhanger.
This is a little bit like almost like a little bit of a gentle touch, or sort of a TV series, a police sort of detective TV series kind of thing. And those sorts of things that we grew up with in the 80s, they were 50-minute or an hour slots, So I think for something like this that stands completely aside to Doctor Who, I think absolutely it's right for it to have been that length at that time. And it doesn't feel like it's dragging when you watch it today. I mean, obviously we've talked about some of the bits that we find really funny about it, but it doesn't, I think it would have fitted that format. It would have worked. And I think Sarah Jane Adventures was probably only really split into that sort of, 2-segment bit, because that's the sort of length of TV, for
kids can focus.
The kids were focusing on, I suppose, at that time. Or maybe it just fitted the format of what they were outputting on children's TV at the time. But no, I think it works. 50 minutes works for me.
I think Brendan, Sarah's assistant, for want of a better terminology, it isn't the strongest performance in this endeavour. I don't want to be unkind. It was almost Gary Russell, but I think you almost want Sean Chapman to be because he's the isn't he? They probably would have worked better.
Ian Sears, wasn't it? There was
Brendan, yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. Probably the performance wasn't A1. There was that funny little bit where the character's laughing at something, but it comes across as it's kind of like a really awkward laugh.
Stop honking, Brendan.
And that's the line. Yeah. That's the absolute line that comes off the back of it, which is a funny line in itself. But it's not added to at any point during the rest of the installment. So we don't know if that was a mistake, whether that was meant to be in there, whether it wasn't, whether it was a character trait, whatever. We may have found that out had we gone to 13 times 50 minutes. But it's very much an odd character.
He's very nerdy, isn't he? When he's talking to K9 and he's trying to establish how his brain works, and he's like, have you got holographic imaging brain scan thing? And he's like, affirmative. It's like,
have you got a 3.5-inch floppy disk drive? Have you got a BBC Spectra? Yeah, it's all very 80s sort of high tech, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, to be fair, our mobile phones are now probably more advanced than K9 was back then.
Because I suppose K9 doesn't have he doesn't have an awful lot to, like we sort of said already. He gets to stop in the house and eavesdrop. And you get lots to see with Sarah, even though it's the dummy one, she has to hoik up this heavy old prop and then crouch on the floor. Because that was Tom's thing, wasn't it? Tom hated doing 2 shots with K9 and having to stoop on the floor. You can see that as sort of the only way you can do dialogue with him, which again comes down to that thing of, if you have the odd scene, it's okay, but he's not a relentless character, is he?
Which I think is why K9 ends up on a lot of tables during the latter seasons of Tom's era, because he's always on the bench being repaired, or he's always on top of the console, or he's doing something that at the level that Tom wants to act at. But Sarah apparently fitted into that very naturally, according to the stories that have come out since, that she was keen to work with it and get down onto the same sort of level as K9. So she wasn't having the same problems as Tom was.
She was about 2 foot shorter. That's why.
True.
But you also, I don't K9's as witty actually as because he's usually got there's a bit of comedy, there's a bit of wit with the part, and I sort of think that's slightly lacking in this endeavour.
Yeah, he becomes a bit of a foil almost. So she's almost asking herself the question, and he's in the background in the back of the car, and he wakes up and goes beep, beep, and answers really quickly, and it's like little one word or 2 word answers coming in just to almost fill in the dialogue for us as the viewer watching this. You're right, the retorts are not there, and in some respects, you know, sit and look at it. K9's there really to shoot the bad guys and come up with the odd sentence here and there. In reality, this vehicle wasn't, even though it's called K9 and Company, this vehicle was really driven around Sarah Jane Smith in many respects. K9 almost becomes almost supplementary.
I mean, there's a bit where he's in the back of the car and he's like, "It is 2 minutes to midnight." And just like, "Oh, shut up." They drive all the way around the village looking for where the sacrifice is taking place, and then realise that it's actually at Aunt Lavinia's place where they first started.
See, there's a lot of practicality. If only Aunt Lavinia had used the phone, and if only Sarah Jane had looked out the window at the flaming torches at the end of the drive.
I know.
Yeah, and the disturbing part is, I don't know whether anyone has read the Target novelization. The reading of it's about 5 hours. I mean, seriously, it's a big book. I can't imagine whether they drill through some of the holes in the plot. But if you're looking for something to do this Christmas, if maybe it's a quiet day and television's been cancelled for everyone, put the K9 audio on and see what the full story is.
Does it add any more to Brendan's character, I wonder?
It couldn't take any away.
Oh, no.
Anyway, so is it one you'll watch again in a hurry, Jason?
Do you know what, actually? I regret not having watched it sooner than this, because I think it will now become traditional Christmas fare for me once a year. I don't think I'll watch it any other time, but I think it's definitely the Christmas special that I've never had, and I think it'll be the Christmas special that I'll watch from here on. So yes, I will be watching it again.
I'm still just having had the discussion recently about how sad The Hand of Fear is, and it's Sarah's last story. That having for 40 years had her next story, never watched it.
I know, and it didn't strike me until I came to actually fish the DVD out to watch this for the review that I actually hadn't watched it, and it dawned on me. And yeah, like I said, I'm quite surprised by it myself. It just seemed to pass me by, but you know, I'm there now. I've caught up. I can put my badge back on, my fandom badge back on. I've now seen K9 and Company.
No.
I don't think it's a bad bit of TV. I think there's some edgy bits in there that I think are a bit, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to watch it every Christmas from here on in with a mince pie and a small sherry in honor of Doris in the background there.
I bet she watched it before you did.
He did.
I'm surprised she wasn't in one of the covens. She wasn't one of the coven in the thing.
Well, she could have been revealed as behind it all at the end, and they'd be like, "Oh, I didn't see that coming." The weird thing is, I think K9 and Company actually for me has always been a bit of a Christmas tradition. I always watch it on Christmas Eve, and depending on what point in Christmas Eve I watch it, I'm usually panic wrapping and a bit half cut. So it's
perfect for that.
It's what you need, and as soon as she's driving about with 2 minutes to go, you're thinking, shit, really should have finished some of this by now, and have I got enough ribbon and all that stuff. So it is a really big Christmas tradition. I remember how sad it was actually watching the first Christmas after Liz had died. It was a sort of strange thing, because it had been such an integral part of my Christmas sort of traditions. It was just a sort of strange thing, but I think it's nice that, I know she wasn't a big fan of it. I know, she thought it was pretty awful, and she was pleased that she got the chance to come back and do it properly. But she isn't in any way awful in it, even within the context of the massively camp title sequence, which we can all ape, and she isn't
best bits.
Exactly. But even it is gloriously awful, but she's sailing through it, isn't she? And I think it's nice that every Christmas there is like that's my old Doctor Who tradition of watching that, and she's a big part of that.
And I feel I've missed out on all of that now, so I'm going to have to catch up.
I just can't understand. This is going to bug me for weeks now. Either you've got some kind of memory problem and you've watched it before and you've just forgotten it, or there's something wrong with you, and I don't know what this. I don't know how to solve this.
Unless I was absolutely half cut when I watched it, which is quite some possibility, knowing me. I genuinely don't believe I've ever watched that. And I wasn't going to come on here and say that if I didn't think that was the case. I mean, normally I'd come on and agree with one of you, but I'm not. I genuinely haven't seen it before.
Do you know that's a greater mystery than any of the plot lines on K9 and Company.
But I've done it now. I've watched it, and I think, you know, the fact we've done this for this review is brilliant, because it means I've actually got it out, watched it, and I can now appreciate it, and I'll have it there for me every Christmas from here on in.
And it did spawn an annual, which is quite something.
It did.
It also spawned a music release as well. So there was.
I said musical. I was like, I don't know about that. Wow, I'm here for that.
So in 1982, they released the theme music, which was part of it was the old days of vinyl that had come back. So it was that was on the first side.
One of Ian Levine's finest there, James. One of Ian Levine's finest, I think.
On the B side was a track called Shona the Star Dancer.
What, from Carnival of Monsters?
Well, when it was released in the US a year later, it was changed to the Leisure Hive. So that was side B. It was originally, like I say, Shona the dance, the Star Dancer.
We did a signing once with Daphne Ashbrook and John Leeson together, and Daphne's an incredible singer. She's got albums, so she played a bit of her music, and we sort of listened to it. And I said, John, you had a single, didn't you? And he was like, yeah. And he was like, K9. And he did it a cappella. Poor Daphne was like, I don't know what this is. I can't tell whether they're taking the piss or whether this is a real thing now. He's like, yeah, John had a hit single.
There's the documentary, isn't there, on the DVD? And he said, I was asked into the recording studio, and they just said, say K9. And he just said, K9.
Yeah, Dick Mills said, say K9, and that's all he said. And then
that's all he said. That was the only thing he said.
It's all you need. It's all you need. Who needs lyrics? I think we might have exhausted Doctor Who and the K9 and Company. Are we going to get any scores on the doors?
Oh, go on, Jason. As this was your first time watching it.
Okay, it's
that we know of.
No, it's my first,
he knows of.
It's my first time that I
he can remember today.
It's my first time that even I know of watching it, and do you know what? It's quite a nice, light, fluffy piece of TV that you don't have to think too hard at, because, like we've already said, there's not much of a plot in there outside of everyone's camping it up and trying to be the villain. But you know what? It gives us some Liz Sladen. It gives us a bit of K9, and it gives us 50 minutes of TV we now call a Christmas special, or I will now call a Christmas special going forward. I know many of the viewer out there have already been calling this, I'm sure, their Christmas special for years. So I'm glad I finally found it. Thank you for making me watch it for this review. But coming around to a score, new Liz Sladen, K9 Mark III, a bit of a story, bit of a Midsummer Murderers type story going on in the village. I'm going to give it a 7.
All that for 7?
Yeah.
Blimey.
Does not become us to mock the Melker.
I mean, God help me, if I was giving it a 10, I'd have gone on for another 15 minutes.
I feel like we need Juno Dawson to phone you up and say you're not coming round for a drink. In a very sinister tone. Do you know what? This is part of my Christmas tradition as well. So this is something that I watch every year. Yes, the plot we've talked about, but you've got the opening scene where you've got the coven, and then you've got Sarah Jane coming across K9 that's been sat in an attic for years, who knows how long. And it had so much promise. And I know it's not, going to win TV awards, but in my childhood, this would, if I'd have watched this when it first gone out, I probably would have been, this is the best thing ever, especially considering what was on at the time. But for me, it does hold a special place for me. So I have scored it a 9.
A Christmas 9. Wow.
A Christmas 9.
Christmas 9. We like that.
That's very festive. I think if I was scoring it on Christmas Eve,
I'd have a few sherries.
If I was scoring this on Christmas Eve, I'd be under the table.
Yeah, I think I would probably have a mold generosity towards it, that because we're filming this in May, I don't quite feel. No, I love it. It is part of my Christmas Eve tradition, but it is what it is, to use the incisive description. Even for Juno and all her camper, that I'm still going to give it 7.5.
Oh, very good. 7.5 there.
Which finishes K9 and Company.
K9.
That is nothing like K9. I mean, have you ever seen a story with K9 in? Is this the revelation now? Jason hasn't seen K9 in Doctor Who. It's like, happy Christmas. Jason has never seen Doctor Who. What is
K9
this?
has arms that go like this.
I know. K9's often used arms.
There's nothing wrong with these arms. These arms are doing the business here.
You're not thinking of Lost in Space, are you?
Oh, I might be,
Danger,
actually.
Will Robinson. Danger.
So I'm not. It's good. Oh God, you did watch the right thing. It was
Yes,
set in the Cotswolds, and
No, it was set in the Cotswolds. Yes, it was. Yes. Sorry, it's Christmas. We're having fun. It's Christmas.
Jason's drunk, dear viewer, and it's not Christmas. So K9 and Company in total, therefore, ends with 23.5, which is nice. It's a good score.
It's a worthwhile score. Absolutely.
So on that note, I still don't believe that he's never seen it before. I don't believe he's seen it now.
I have watched it. I've watched it twice for the review.
Hang on, so you just said you've watched it. Now your figures doubled.
Twice. I went through once at 1 speed and once at 1.5, just to make sure I had it in my head.
I have so many questions about that.
What?
But let's park them.
What questions?
Jason, on the last video we recorded, which may not be the one that goes out in order here, someone had emptied your house out. Is it because they put you into sheltered accommodation? Is there a bigger problem here? I don't understand.
No, dear viewer, they didn't come and repossess the house. The house is still here. No, I myself still can't believe that this is the first time of ever watching K9 Company.
Twice. First time ever.
Obviously, I've watched it twice now to obviously get it right for the review. But it's the first time I've actually watched it.
You've never watched another one all the way through for a review, so you watched this twice on different speeds.
Yeah, because it's at 50 minutes. It's a quick one, isn't it?
Oh gosh.
Anyway, Merry Christmas, viewer.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much to anyone who's made it all the way through that. Thank you as ever to James and Jason.
A pleasure as always to come and do a review.
And I hope you get a well-deserved drink of sherry after watching this.
You're gonna need it.
I hope that when you have watched this, you go back to the start and watch it on a different speed, just to make sure that you've appreciated it properly.
Do people watch us on 1.5 speed? Is that?
People just don't watch us.
I mean, no, we have a viewer. They do enjoy watching us, so we're doing all right, I think.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, thank you very much to everyone at home. I hope you have a lovely Christmas, and we shall see you soon.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
You're not getting it back off Jason on that.
No,
You've got to make a bit more noise.
Back off of him then.
Feliz Navidad and all that.